It's Pride, bitches! Woo! Welcome to June.
Hi, everybody.
This is Dan. He's our ally for the day.
Yes, I was kidnapped and forced to wear this boa thing.
He couldn't wait to put it on.
Oh yeah, I put it around there. Yeah. I want to be like all the other Hulkamaniacs out there, brother.
That is literally where I got the boa at. It was from a Hulk Hogan costume.
Yeah.
The Hulk Hogan costume was awesome. Everyone loved it, but Hulk Hogan is a terrible person, so now it's kind of been taken apart. And I painted up the pants to look like Junkyard Dog that has Thump on the back and the little stars, and JY Dog on the legs. And
we use the Hulkamanian T-shirt as a crap rag. It's
I don't know where it got, but we used the wig as a riffraff wig for Rocky Horror last year.
Yeah,
so that was pretty fun.
But yeah, it's all been recycled for better, more noble purposes.
Yes.
But
So today I didn't write down what stupid things Trump has done for the week, but what stupid things WWE has done for the week. I think we can do that. So last night, I know this isn't our regular wrestling show, but last night or yesterday, over the weekend at some point, they released R-Truth. Released. He's no longer with the company. It's like, I mean, I know the guy's in his 50s, but the legacy, like the legacy contracts are like right there.
Oh, legend contracts.
Legend contracts are like right there.
Yeah, like guy's basically been with your company consistently for close to 20 years, from 2008. He had another run in 99 to 2001. I would think at that point you're a well enough figure to have deserved some sort of retainership by WWE or TKO. I mean, your chief creative officer, Triple H, basically was around, as a professional wrestler at the same time that Truth was. If nothing else, the man is a thoroughly entertaining comedic force on the show.
He is amazing. Honestly, he since Awesome Truth got back together, then they broke up, and he's been, here and there, and now has all his spots with Cena. He's hilarious and amazing and wonderful and just a joy to see. I think it was a huge mistake by Triple H.
Yeah. And then I guess they still have time to change that around. I guess the other one that got on the release was Carlito, which was nowhere near as surprising.
I don't know if Carlito got released or if he left.
Yeah, because he won some sort of championship in WWC.
Yeah, go Carlito. He won a belt from another
which I believe is
promotion.
If it's WWC, it's his dad's organization. So
I'm sure it's all above board.
Take it with a grain of salt. Because that's on the other side of the spectrum. There's nobody surprised that Carlito is gone, and was kind of surprised he's around this long.
He hasn't really done much. Yeah.
Other than the Judgment Day's Hellboy, I guess.
Kind of.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Their placeholder to say that they're in effect.
What's going to be happening with Judgment Day from here on out?
Yeah, because basically
they're kind of breaking up. They've been
very slow motion. The only one that's going even more slow motion is what's his name? Austin Theory.
Oh, A-Town Down Under.
A-Town Down Under is the only one that's going in even further slow motion, because if they have the storyline go on, and then they don't get seen on TV for a month, and then the storyline comes back, and then they go on TV for 2 months. But yeah, Truth is the one that's like, people are kind of very much in shock because of that.
Yeah, it is. It is shocking. And it kind of sucks, honestly.
Yeah, you were convinced he was going to go into a Legends contract at some point. Like, I didn't expect it to be a full-time, or even the capacity of being an active competitor forever. Again, the guy's 53 years old. And the fact that he was able to do any of the in-ring stuff that he was still able to do was pretty remarkable. That being said, I wouldn't have. I'm WWE. I wouldn't have let him go. I mean, I
wouldn't have. I would have put him on a specialized contract to keep him around.
Yeah.
on his terms whenever he felt he was able to do it.
Yeah.
He, in my opinion, he did nothing but add to the show in every way. So, well, yeah, disappointment there.
Well, yeah, that was a stupid thing from wrestling that we both picked up on.
Yeah, and I wanted to complain about it.
All right.
All right, so I brought a visual aid today. I actually had this. It was weighing down some stuff in my garden plot.
What is it?
It's a brick.
Why do we have a brick on the show?
Because this is the history of Pride. And Pride started with bricks. A lot of people don't realize this, but this is the real legacy of Pride that we've forgotten. The queers have forgotten it a little bit, I think. So let's go back. Let's go back a long time to Christopher Street in Greenwich Village in New York in the year 1969.
Hippies everywhere.
Well, yeah. But we are talking about, okay, so I think it's important to lay some groundwork so you really understand, because a lot of people are like, they don't realize that Pride was a riot at first. That's exactly what it was. And they don't really understand, the history of where it came from. So today, we're going to talk about that history. All right. So basically, being gay was illegal in this country. Cross-dressing, or what was known at the time as being a transvestite, which is, as we know it today, somebody who cross-dresses or is a trans person. Somebody who wears drag.
Yeah, but there are, I guess, the transvestite thing, there's still people who are straight and dress in drag, tend to refer themselves as transvestites, but I mean, like,
okay. I thought it's been mostly out of use, but I think in that very small capacity.
I mainly see it more because,
but at the time, we didn't have all these words to describe things. So transvestite was the most common one because it meant somebody who dresses in clothing that is contrary to their birth sex, someone who is a trans person, or someone who is a drag queen or a drag king.
I also tend to think with like the term transvestite, and I think it was grouped with terms like homosexual, and in that period.
Yes, it was grouped with homosexuals, but that's slightly.
But I mean, in its intent to denote mental illness,
yes,
or deviant behavior,
yes. Well, that was another thing. I'm getting.
Sorry.
No, it's actually. I'm glad that you brought that up because I would have forgotten to mention that. So not only was this considered illegal, but it was also considered for a long time in the DSM. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is what is used as the basis of
mental health diagnosis.
Basically the American Psychological Association's handbook for all the shits that's wrong with y'all.
Yeah.
So it was also considered. They were both considered mental illnesses, but like criminal mental illnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
it was basically something to equate homosexuality or any type of things now that would be under the queer umbrella as on par with, I would say, pedophilia or bestiality.
Yes, very much so.
Or
criminally illegal and unnatural, I suppose. Anything that you would think, like perversions.
To the point where, at the very least, radical, I guess, radical medical and social, I hesitate to use the word rehabilitation would be used, and
questionable rehabilitation.
A definite separation from the mainstream of society, most likely through mental institutions or prison.
Yes, or also usually chemical castration.
Yeah.
If any of you know who Alan Turing is, basically the guy that saved, that used computers to save us from save Britain from the Nazis in World War II. He killed himself after being outed and being forced into chemical castration. So that was, I don't know if that was necessarily used a lot in the U.S., but it was used a lot in Britain.
Yeah, it was much more frequent in the UK.
So basically, queer people, and I use the word, I self-identify as queer, and I use it to explain all of us. If you don't, that's okay. I don't mean any harm by it, but that's just a shorthand way that I use for the entire community. So queer and trans people were basically criminals and deviants and perverts if they were themselves. So to fit in with the rest of society, gay men and lesbians would get married to each other, basically as a social contract. You were not free to be out on the street as yourself, as a queer or trans person. So a lot of times in larger cities, in order to find, the gay bar, basically, was a place that was seedy, undesirable, not well taken care of, and usually run by the mob. That is a key component here, because the mafia didn't care if they were being illegal. All of their shit was illegal. So this was just another, number of it. But they basically, they were extortionists. So, they would charge high prices and not take care of, the buildings, and leech everything they could out of these groups, because they knew that, queer people and trans people had nowhere else to go. They had nowhere else that was safe. So they had to turn to seedy places and seedy people like the mafia to provide them with safe havens where they could be themselves.
It was a far cry from, I would say, the more, I guess, like, for lack of a word, your high society queers of the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th century, where they had I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, your smoking rooms and and basically
the kind of places that Lord Byron would go, and Oscar Wilde. Who they themselves were. Well, Lord Byron was kind of bi, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know if he was bi or if he was like fuck anything.
Yeah, he was a whore.
But like Oscar Wilde, even he was famous and still subject to jail time. But so this is to kind of give you an idea of what things were like for these groups of people. Now, our story begins specifically at one of these dive bars owned by the mob on Christopher Street in Greenwich Village in Manhattan, the Stonewall Inn. On the night of June 27th. Oh, wait, actually, before I get into that, I should explain the cops in this situation. So, being that these were mob fronts, and being that they were houses of perversion by normal straight society, tell me those fuckers ain't perverted. They would routinely get, the cops would routinely come and bust them up and arrest people and hold them because they're, wearing clothing not matching their birth sex. And, because they were places run by the mob, and, so our night starts like any other night, in fact, actually, the cops, the PLCB, which is the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, which in this state is as close as you can get to a fascist ruling party, sicked the state cops on a gay bar. It was, they had no real reason for it, but it did feel eerily familiar.
In Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it happened in Pittsburgh about a month or so ago.
Oh, okay. You're talking about now. Okay.
Yes, yeah. No, I'm saying it was eerily familiar headline to read. I mean, nobody got arrested afterwards. They all just went outside, and the drag queen started performing in the rain, and sounds amazing.
It was,
But it was the government strong arming queer and trans people again by finding flimsy excuses to raid their spaces.
yeah. It's a way to single them out, and I guess from your more conservative side, Christian Coalition folks that goes and look at all these perverts coming out. It's very much if we've been watching MASH lately with I would say your
Frank
Burns, your Frank Burns, yeah.
Yeah, they'd be writing letters to the general.
And then it would get them all hot, and they would go back and have sex later on.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Look
No,
at
that, honestly, that is actually, like, a great example of
straight hypocrisy.
straight hypocrisy,
Yeah.
yes, because pretty much anywhere that, like Republicans rail against trans people and queer people, but anywhere that the Republican National Convention is taking place, the YouPorn searches, YouPorn and porn, what's the other porn site?
Pornhub.
Yeah, Pornhub searches for trans porn go through the roof in that location. So it is, yeah.
I like to say at this moment, we do not belittle anybody on the Pornhub or who work on the Pornhub or.
Oh no, nothing against sex workers.
Sex workers.
Pro sex workers.
You're doing the Lord's work.
Yes.
God bless.
This channel is always pro sex work.
Yeah, well,
usually anti-Republican.
Yeah.
But
there is definitely a hypocrisy within that. Like,
yeah.
I'm not saying people in the Democratic Party don't have their share of perverts. We saw what happened with Anthony Weiner. Again, a guy.
Appropriately named.
Yeah, but we see it less into usually not the degree that we see it on the right. Like I guess
no, it's significant on the right.
Like
you want to tell everybody how to live, but you don't follow your own rules.
Yeah, they mark
like you say, look at these perverts over here, while on this side you've got ministers and cops and youth leaders and politicians abusing underage boys and girls,
like
cis or trans.
The right market purposefully markets itself on, at least in part, on moral austerity. I think to a large degree.
Yeah.
That like we are the party of traditional values. We are the party that frowns upon sexual expression, upon I guess the word free love, or anything other than the quote unquote traditional man and woman together in a marriage-based relationship, raising their 2.4 kids.
Even if everybody's miserable, nobody's had an orgasm forever.
Yeah. Sounds depressing.
It does. Yeah. Anyway, so back to the cops. It was actually pretty common for the cops to come. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for the cops to come and break up these places, raid gay bars, as they were commonly known. Beat up on the queer and trans people that were there. Arrest them for bogus charges of not wearing the correct clothing.
Also,
one step up from sumptuary laws, quite frankly.
Also, the more corrupt ones, especially places like New York or other large cities, Chicago also on that list, would also engage in extortion techniques.
Yes,
with
they would.
Many people, especially ones that have the money to pop it up, to not expose them to family, friends, and not...
Absolutely. There was definitely extortion and blackmail involved.
Yeah. Definitely within the cops, if they got a hold of somebody, that they would do. You basically, if it got raided, you tried to make a run for it if you could, because if not, you're definitely going through the system, and you could possibly, at the very least, lose your job.
If people were outed during this time in something like this, they could absolutely lose their job, their homes,
their livelihoods. They're standing within mainstream communities.
Their normal thing, like if they were married, say it's a gay man married to a straight woman, who was, he was trying to pass as straight, he could, lose his wife, his kids, his house, his job, literally just his entire life, because it was that heavily frowned upon in normal mainstream circles.
Same thing, say within your lesbian community.
Absolutely the same.
Even
Slightly worse because
yeah.
it's slightly worse because people try to fix lesbians by raping them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's slightly worse, significantly worse.
Significantly worse.
So yeah, like the cops made everything worse. They would beat people up. The mob didn't care.
No.
You know, they were making money from these places. If they shut them down, oh well, I'll open up another one in some other rat hole and make money there.
We'll wait for a new crop to pop up and basically exploit them and what's the word I'm looking for? Get value extraction out of that community until
by providing almost nothing.
Until again the same rating takes place, and then it's very similar in a way to the way they would do with drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. You just basically use up a certain base until it's the cops get involved. Those people get taken off, and then you find a fresh new crop that comes up.
But the thing is, it's people who are desperate to live their lives to be free of all of this, the cops, the mob, just society itself saying that, the person that you are is wrong and you deserve to be punished for, even exploring that side of yourself. So this is really, it's important to understand what it was like for queer people and trans people at the time.
In a way, it's almost the way the mob and other organizations like that operated with the queer community. It's almost colonialism on a micro scale.
Yeah, you can say that. But anyway, so it's important to understand, the kind of pressures that these people were facing at this time. Also, at this time, if you say you were a kid and you were found out as being gay, queer, trans, if somebody caught you, there are a lot of instances where and this is still true today, where, you get thrown out of your house. What are you going to do? You're a 15-year-old. You haven't, you are not a legal adult. You haven't completed school. What are you going to do? You're going to do what all 15-year-olds do in that situation. You're going to be a sex worker.
Yeah.
So in Greenwich Village on Christopher Street is very important to remember. That's where the Stonewall is, but also that was the hub of a lot of queer and trans life in New York. So kids would come from all over the country. They had no homes. They would be living on the street in New York, but able to kind of support themselves by doing sex work. For men who
exploited the system.
Were powerful enough to, be able to pay for.
Our good friend exploitation pays a visit once again.
A lot of them lived terrible lives. A lot of them got murdered horribly.
There's a Ramones song called 53rd and 3rd that kind of explores that whole theme. But was written by Dee Dee Ramone.
Oh yeah, because the Ramones were from that area too. In fact, they're
over on the east side,
not very far from Christopher Street, where Stonewall is CBGB's and Joey Ramone Boulevard. So they would have.
It's about a 20-minute walk, 25-minute walk.
But
53rd and 3rd.
Well, it wasn't like they were confined to that area. They would have
they could go But
anyway,
they lived over. I believe some of the Ramones were over in Brooklyn, and eventually just kind of migrated over to that area, Brooklyn and Queens. But
anyway, so it's important to understand that this is already where a lot of this stuff is going on, and there were a lot of sex workers like Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson specifically, who are going to come you hear those names a lot, who were already sex workers, had lived on the street for a while, and who were already starting organizations of the other kids who were working as sex workers, the queer and trans kids who were homeless, street kids. There were some small organizations scattered around. I know there was an independent news agency, very small, working out of a small apartment somewhere on Christopher Street. I can't remember what they were called. But there was a smattering of community here, because it was kind of the heart of gaydom on, the eastern half of the country.
The Village Voice was kind of involved in that too.
Was it the Village Voice? Is that who I'm thinking of?
It might be the Village Voice, but I know for sure.
I don't know if they were the Village Voice at the time.
No, it was the Village Voice.
Oh, was it? Okay. But, so anyway, all right. The night of June 27th, 1969, it's a normal night at the Stonewall. There's gay people, queer people, trans people, all, partying, having a night of it. And there's another police raid happens. And this time, people are really starting to get angry with the way they're being treated. And, there's tension building up, tension from all sides in society. The cops who keep beating them up and treating them like trash and, taking them to jail. And so there's a lot of pressure on all sides for these people. And this was the night that the pressure got too much because there was a lesbian. I'm pretty sure it's Stormy. I cannot pronounce it. Delarvier. Stormy Delarvier was a drag king, and at the time, he at the time identified as a butch lesbian and performed as a drag king. As far as I know, Stormy Delarvier. I cannot pronounce that.
This is French.
It is. He was from New Orleans. So he was a biracial drag king from New Orleans at the time. After this, he lived out his life as an African-American man for the rest of his life. So he's actually a trans man who at this point was identifying as a butch lesbian drag king performer. And I believe it was Stormy Delarvier who got the shit kicked out of her. Basically, they were really beating on her, and she was begging the crowd she was begging the crowd to help. The crowd came out of Stonewall. They were on the streets while this was happening, and that was at the point where the dam broke. So two of our two characters, Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, I know definitely Marsha P. Johnson was there. I'm pretty sure Sylvia Rivera was there, but I think she got there late when this was happening. And Zazu Nova, who was also another trans woman, another black trans woman, sex worker who lived in the area. Zazu Nova is, by most accounts, and it's a little fuzzy, but is credited as being the one to throw the first brick at the cops. So the dam burst, and a brick was thrown at the cops, and another brick, and bottles, and stones, and anything that they could find. They actually drove, some of the bar attendees were still in the bar at the time, but the ones who were outside, a riot started. It was definitely a riot, and they drove the cops back into the bar, hurling projectiles at them into their cars. Their cars were on fire, knocked over. It was probably terrifying, but amazing, because fuck the police.
I think it's a matter of not just, this is speaking to somebody that's not a queer person or I'd say a member of the queer community beyond being an ally. Like the institution of policedom is, I think, in its nature. And you can say, "Oh, there are good cops." It's like, sure, they're
Sure,
probably,
there's good cops.
but it's the and there's an
Somewhere.
adage I heard years back, and it goes like this: if one cop is committing abuses and violence and fraud upon the community, and the other 99 cops are doing nothing to stop them, how many corrupt cops are there?
100.
There are 100 corrupt cops.
Yes.
And that was largely it was largely a part of the institution in the the early to mid 19th century when policedom as we knew it was founded. It was in the 1880s, 1890s. It was in the age of Prohibition, and it was in the age of the 60s and New York, and context here of Stonewall. So you're
Most definitely.
the institution of policedom is profoundly flawed and lends itself to corruption. It lends itself to abuse. It lends itself to state violence, state sanctioned violence.
Very much
And
so. And
all we're expressing,
using cops to protect property instead of people.
yes, and all this was expressed here at Stonewall towards a particular community. And
Yes. And that community got tired of it.
yeah.
And
And
they revolted.
It happened before, and this is just the point.
It's like Battlestar Galactica. All of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again. Because you know what? People can only take so much shit.
Again, there are those historians that would, especially those that have an anti-queer bent that will
Oh, wait. We disconnected.
so well.
We were doing so well. Anyway, all right. Well, we'll still do this for the... we'll let that reconnect. Who knows if it will? I don't know. But, so this continued into the early hours of June 28th. Excuse me. 1969. Eventually it died down, but the reverberations were
Pandora's box was
pretty, yes, it was. So our two main characters here, obviously Stormy and Zazu remained, and there are tons of other names. I'm not purposely leaving anyone out, but you know, the two main characters for me in this are Sylvia and Marcia, because okay, so after Stonewall itself occurred, there was a lot of energy around this. There was a couple of organizations formed, you know, that the Gay Liberation Front and Gay Activist Alliance both got formed. But it really, you know, the year after this, to commemorate Stonewall, there was a parade. It was the Christopher Street Day celebration, Christopher Street Day Festival. But really, the idea of pride, of making this a movement, was something that was spearheaded significantly by Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, to the revulsion of a huge amount of the community, staggeringly made up of white gay men, white homosexual men.
Yes.
There is video footage out there of Sylvia Rivera being booed significantly for suggesting that this become a full-scale movement, toward, you know, that everyone come together and make this a full-scale movement. So those gay men out there, and I've argued with many of you online, who think that you're not a member of our group, that you're, you know, somehow above the rest of us, that trans women, you don't want to be in a group with trans women, bitch, you better not be celebrating Pride, because Pride wouldn't be Pride without the tireless efforts of trans women, and specifically trans women of color. So it was a bit of a... Did you need to add something?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I think to a certain degree also, it was. Is there a form of elitism within that? Absolutely.
Most definitely.
But I think it's both fueled and instigated by the idea that I think, especially in I guess, for lack of a better term, queer hierarchy, gay men often, especially those of the professional class, had one foot in that
in
that
mainstream society
mainstream straight world.
where they could be kind of accepted. And for a long time, yes, for a long time, the image of the acceptable image
Yeah.
of pride, of queer rights, was the wealthy white cis gay man who was a professional, and who could, be a part of straight society, mainstream straight society. And that was only because they looked appropriate.
They were
That's not because somehow they're better than all the rest of us under the queer and trans umbrella. It's just because they were the ones that looked the closest to what mainstream society would accept. And so they were the ones that were chosen to represent all of us.
To borrow a term from Black liberation movements, or for Black history, they were passing.
Yes, they were passing. Exactly. Exactly. But that's the thing. That's the thing in trans circles too.
And I think
you're passing.
And I think within the having a definitive movement come about, there was a fear of them losing what they perceived they had.
The status that
they had by having that one foot in the straight mainstream community.
Yeah. And so
they didn't want to be
which
out
is actually
as a more simplistic term.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So
So there was a lot of hate from, the trans women of color, the street kids, wanting to form coalitions and wanting to actually fight back and stand up and say, that we're here, we're queer. What was the last one? We're here, we're queer, get used to it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is basically the things that Rivera and Johnson wanted to accomplish. They could see the writing on the wall that they needed to use this all of the power and the strength that they had gotten. The what's it called when the car rolls?
Oh.
Momentum. All the momentum that they had gained from this pride, before it was pride, of expressing their rights. It needed to be, they knew that people needed to come together and they needed to form a movement, or things would just go back to the way they were. They needed to build on that momentum, form it into a nationwide movement that would work for all of us under the queer umbrella and the trans umbrella. And they got a lot of hate and a lot of pushback for it. Very much for the reasons that Dan illuminated. It was a very good, it was a very good
I would also
statement, very, very accurate. And so it took a lot of convincing and it took a lot of work to get to the point where, yes, we're a group. We're going to be having regular parades. We're going to stand up and we're going to say, we're not going in the closet anymore.
I also say there was some retaliation from, also to a certain degree, from gay cis white women. Not quite as much, but I think to a certain degree.
They are higher on the hierarchy, but I don't see. I mean, I don't know about that. If that's something that you know about,
a little bit. Like I would not. It's not quite as much, but I would definitely say there's a little bit of retaliation on that. Again, that some of the idea that they could move in quote unquote the straight white circles.
Yeah, sort of the same. Yeah.
So I would give it, again, not anywhere near as much. And then I say not anywhere near as badly as I would say now with
I think on their end it was more they just weren't showing up.
Yeah.
Than they were showing up and booing and pushing back.
Yeah.
That they were just like, whatever, I don't care, I'm not coming. But so yeah, it was a lot of work by a lot of people most of them trans people of color, to get us to the point where we were able to have parades. Where we were able to, because Pride is not just the parade. The parade is the culmination of the forceful changing of society by throwing bricks at people to be able to be who you are without fear of reprisal from society. And it eventually got to the point where the last Sunday in June was Gay Pride Day. That's when it was celebrated. It wasn't a month until 1999, when there was a proclamation by President Bill Clinton to make it a whole month. And it was just so much legwork and pushing and changing minds and hearts to get to the point where now we have corporate sponsorships.
I would say,
and politicians speaking at our rallies to get votes, because we are, a force now. And I think it's to a point where it's we're forgetting our roots. Mm-hmm. We're forgetting that sometimes you've got to throw bricks at people to get your fucking point across. That we started as a riot. We started with violent ends in order to be truly free. Well, and that's how violent means. Thank you. In order to be truly free. And it wasn't just something that happened overnight. It was something that took decades and decades of organizing and political pressure and coalitions and just trying to be open with people and say, look, I'm not a monster. I just want to live my life. And so do all these people. We just want to be ourselves, and we've got to the point where we are legally not able to do that anymore because we voted in a tyrant who on day one of his administration took away my humanity, as well as the humanity of every other trans person and agender person and non-binary person who lives in the country. And so this year, I think that it is more important than ever that we start learning about our roots again and remember how all this came about and how much blood and sweat and tears went into making, pushing society out of the way so that we could truly be ourselves. The parades are just reminders of everything that we've gone through. They aren't pride in and of themselves. They're just an excuse to be out in the world as who we are, and an opportunity to be out in the world as who we are. But it means so much more than just going to a parade. It has to, and we have to remember that. What was it that Frederick Douglass said? Power concedes nothing without a demand. And we've been not demanding very much lately.
Complacent.
We've been very complacent. That's how we ended up here, with people throwing trans people under the bus. Let me tell you, buddy, trans people are the reason that any of us get to celebrate anything this month.
All right. Yeah. I would also, let me start off by saying Stonewall is definitely an important touchstone in queer. Again, this is me speaking as an ally, not a member of this community officially, but somebody has an avid passion for history and exploring various. I've always said since I did a book in the aughts called The Pistolers, that names and dates and places are the length and width of history, but perspective is the depth. That being said, I like to address two other important points in queer history,
Oh, absolutely. There were. It's not just like queer history started
Yeah.
in 1969.
no,
That was just kind of when the dam broke in New York, and this followed from it. But there were plenty of other times before this
Yeah.
when queer people made their
But
voice.
I think in terms of like mainstreaming, becoming, I guess, somewhat accepted members of the greater society at large, I would say the first being then my lifetime. I guess speaking from a member of Generation X, the first being the AIDS epidemic of the 1980s.
I did kind of gloss over that. That was definitely another defining moment in queer history because literally the president of the United States, who had gay friends because he was a former Hollywood actor, committed genocide by neglect on his constituency.
Yeah.
And that was, a lot of people don't. And I guess in that regard, that was when the gay men kind of became the visual, because it hit the gay community the hardest. And they kind of became the visual representation of all of us.
Yeah. I think to a large degree that the disease, the disease and the effects that it had were horrific.
Yes, it was.
But
horrific. It's
I'm trying to say this in a manner that doesn't make me seem like a monster, but there are positive things that came out of and one of them is the humanization of the queer community.
definitely, yeah.
I
Call it the silver lining in something that was
and a major shit
Just
sandwich. They're not to mix
god-awful.
metaphors, but I think that was one thing that humanized that community. They put a face to it, to put it beyond a stereotype. And also, I think there were very people looked at people like Rock Hudson and other people that were, I guess, the famous persons that were
high profile
people that were suffering and died from the virus.
Who tried to keep it secret.
And look like, oh, these people contributed to our tapestry. Maybe we should explore this community more. Maybe we should look at them more than just a tired trope or stereotype. I would think the other moment was the murder of Matthew Shepard in the late 90s. And it sucks that it had to come
to that was
to illustrate the violence.
Wyoming, South Dakota?
Wyoming, I believe.
It was 1997.
Seven, I believe.
I think it was in the late 90s.
Late 90s,
and
it was
Matthew Shepard was an out teenager who was found one morning, murdered,
basically,
road hauled, and tied to.
I believe it was a post. It was like a fence post.
Like a fence. He was tied to a fence.
Beaten, bloodied. Disfigured.
Because he was gay.
Yeah. There was no other reason.
Shocking.
And it was horrific. But again, it forced us to look at queer folk.
And ourselves. As non-queer folk ourselves.
Yeah, ourselves, yeah. It showed us that the monster was not them, but it was, speaking as a straight person, the monsters were not them, it was us.
And also, the monsters of bigotry and ignorance.
Yeah.
That led, also, Brandon Teena, although it was less because Brandon Teena was, he was homeless and had gotten in trouble with the law, so he was a less good victim.
A quote-unquote vagrant, I guess.
Yeah. But his rape and murder was also pretty shocking.
Yeah. But I think
I think Shepard's was the one that was more high profile, that was kind of shocked people into paying attention.
Yeah. And I think that led to, again, a beginning of a dialogue and acceptance that again started with Stonewall and it progressed through the 70s, 80s, and 90s through the life of
But just because people see you as being this horrible thing doesn't mean that you're this horrible thing. It means that maybe they need to pay more attention.
And I think it was from there you led to, I guess, an incorporation of gay culture into the quote unquote greater tapestry, mainstream greater tapestry of Western culture.
Also, I would say like Ellen, that was like what, 1993, 95, something like that.
I think there were other smaller like media moments, stuff like that.
Yeah, I would put that. Well, I mean, it wasn't like a huge moment, but it was, you know, it was like I'm gay, and then basically it destroyed her career, which is something that would happen to people, you know, 30 years prior to this. For
there was very no bouncing back. There were out and semi-out gay.
There were. I mean, Paul Lynde was like,
or Charles Nelson Riley.
They were. Oh, they're like everyone's funny gay uncle. Yeah. There were accepted gay people, but there was a very small number of accepted gay people, and for most gay people, they got beat up, they got murdered, they got thrown out of their houses as teenagers and died on the streets, or got murdered by a John.
Yeah.
There was no national outcry for them. But
I think after that point, like I say, there was
another notable act of violence. The Pulse nightclub shooting. I think we have to talk about that in 2016.
Yeah.
Not just queer people died. There were straight people, allies, who got killed too. The gunman didn't care. That was
it was an act of violence against an idea, and people got killed in the process.
It was a hate crime. It was a hate crime against the queer and the trans community, especially the queer and trans communities of color, because it happened in Miami, which is very Latino, far less majority white than other places. And you cannot talk about any of this without keeping in mind intersectionality, because some of the biggest gains in our communities have been because of people of color. It is so important. And some of the greatest losses we've had, I mean, trans women, the murder rate of trans women in this country is staggering, but the murder rate of trans women of color is absolutely heartbreaking. It is the highest of any other group that gets murdered in this country, trans women of color. And they are the ones who do the most work for our community and historically have done so since the beginning. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would also say, like you were mentioning the nightclub earlier. In that particular region of Florida, and Florida in general, but particularly that region, there's this strange overlap of conservative and liberal left communities and ideological stances.
Yeah.
Just in the Latin community alone, I was like, people tend to think of the Latin community as this
monolithic Democrat, but
especially like you say, you're
there are a lot of, especially Cuban people who are very conservative. Yeah.
I mean, again, a lot of.
Well, I mean, there are conservative queer groups too, like the Log Cabin Republicans are a good example.
Yeah. Which again, you can go on a tangent there with
you can
gay conservacy, because again, it seems self-defeating.
Shit about you, okay, Ernest Rome?
Yeah.
That's okay. For
Ernst Rome.
Yeah. For people who don't know, Ernst Röhm was a gay Nazi soldier.
Yeah.
The gays, despite what J.K. Rowling, bitch face herself, would have you believe, were actually one of the first targeted groups by the Nazis. They were maybe not the first, but they were definitely one of the first, including...
I would say more of the trans community than the queer.
Oh, what did I say?
I think
Did I say queer?
you said gay.
Oh, I'm
Right,
sorry.
the
It was
gays were-
specifically the trans community.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I missed
The trans
stated
were
that.
trans folk
It
were seen
was
as-
very. It was. There was a lot of research being done at the time into human sexuality and
film.
yeah. The oh, I can't remember the name of it. I always have to look it up. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna look it up here on
It was
camera.
one of the earliest ones in looking into trans and non-binary culture as well as queer culture.
20s to fluid trans people. That's not good, but Magnus Hirschfeld was a doctor. The Institute für Sexualwissenschaft, the Institute for Sexual Science in Germany, by Magnus Hirschfeld. He was a doctor. There was actually huge amounts of research being done at the time, like groundbreaking amounts of research into human sexuality in the spheres of homosexuality, bisexuality, pansexuality, and transgenderism, and sexuality within transgender spheres that would not come along again until like the 90s, 80s.
Yeah.
Like it was decades ahead of its time. It was groundbreaking, but it was
At the very least, till the Kinseys in the 50s, I would say, and that's it. That's it.
sure.
That's it.
I mean, I think it far surpassed that, to be honest.
most
And
likely.
so because it was, Nazi society, well, German society leading into the Nazi takeover was extremely rigid. It was man, woman, child. The man was the head of the family. The woman looked up to the man and did whatever he wanted. The children did the same. The man looked up to whoever was next in line. It was a very rigid, hierarchical, patriarchal structure. So the Nazis used that to, when they came in and started influencing society, basically anything that was outside of that structure was wrong. Being that the Institute for Sexual Science was, saying that maybe this way is not the only way, that we should be living. Maybe, they were presenting alternatives to society that would have broken down the Nazis' hold on society by using that strict hierarchical structure. And this was something that would have caused an issue that would have helped to erode that strict hierarchical structure. It wasn't because they were Christians and they think, they Leviticus. Actually, the Nazis didn't really rely on Christianity. They were trying to snuff out Christianity because it was a challenge to their leadership. Excessive Christianity, excessive religion. Anyway, but so this was also a challenge to their leadership because this group was saying, you don't need to exist in this tight world that society tells you. Look at all the research that we've been doing. It's okay to be this way too. This is all naturally occurring just the same way that this is, and they couldn't have that. So it wasn't even that it was literally that it was, they were eroding the basis on which the Nazis needed to have their power built upon. So that was the reason that, a big part of the reason that this was a target for them early on. And there was a man called Ernst Röhm who helped destroy the trans community in Germany. And actually, it was a very thriving community. before the Nazis took over, Germany was. I don't know if any of you have ever seen any silent German film from the 1920s. It's amazing stuff. It was there was definitely a burgeoning arts community, very free arts community that had to be stamped out. That this Institute for Sexual Science was definitely a component of that needed to be stamped out to retain their rigid power structure. And Ernst Röhm was an out gay Nazi who helped do that, who then ended up getting arrested when the Nazis came for the gay people.
Yeah.
So, gay men who don't want to be a part of all of this, not only do you owe it to the trans community and trans women of color to, have a month for which you can be out and proud, but it really hasn't gone well for you in the past when you've tried to throw the rest of us under the bus, because once they get rid of us, they're going to come for you. You're not safe. Just like Ernst Röhm wasn't.
I would say, just an addendum to certain things. You brought up the Nazis, like what happened with the Nazis' treatment of the trans community and subsequent. I would say that certain things like executions that went on, certain setting. There were some of the earliest people to go to concentration camps.
Yeah.
Things like chemical castration were going on at that point. But
a lot of them were just killed outright.
The general treatment towards the trans and queer folk, certain elements of the queer community there, was a microcosm of their attitudes towards their perceived liberal and openness of Weimar Germany that preceded.
Mm-hmm. And of course, like, they basically had to be like, and much like the Jews, the Jewish people, Jewish communities, be like, this is the reason why our country is in the shitter. Look at these people. Look their decadence and their bullshit, obviously. And, that was, decadence, obviously a little bit more on the artistic and the trans communities than the Jewish communities. That was different. But it was the same thinking of the othering of these communities that they needed to, were thrown under the bus in order to be, that they were scapegoated to be like, this is the reason why our country is in the shitter. This is the reason why our economy sucks.
Yeah.
It was for different reasons, but it was very similar.
The second point I'd like to bring up in the Nazis' relationship with queer folk, it goes back to Rome. The gay portion of that, homosexuality, was kind of not the trans or gender, but the homosexuality, especially homosexual men itself, was one of the last elements that the Nazis went after. Mm-hmm. Hitler himself was not necessarily anti-homosexual in the beginning.
Wonder why?
Yes, there are reports of him at least having bisexual tendencies. Again, this is something.
Do you want to take that off?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
There are
sorry
reported but unconfirmed instances of Hitler engaging in homosexual and bisexual acts. That being said, there were definitely elements of the party itself that wanted to add homosexuals to their list of targeted groups, and Rome and his general attitudes. I guess basically you have to go back to the brown. Like, Rome was a member of a group called the Brown Shirts, and the Brown Shirts were a paramilitary group in the Nazis that were instrumental in the rise to power. But once
they were the Proud Boys.
Yes. To a large degree. But to at once the Nazis came into power, the brown shirts had to a large degree outlived their usefulness because they had access to state power. And
actually, a lot of them, a lot of the Hitler's SS was not made up of the original brown shirts. A lot of them had been disbanded, and he used other people.
Yeah.
So basically, they got discarded as long.
Yeah, and there's starting to be a power struggle between Rome and the brown shirts and the I guess Himmler and the SS and the mainstream army, and this culminated in an event known as the Night of the Long Knives, where key figures in the brown shirt movement, including Rome, were taken out. And again, this is roughly around the point where homosexuals were added to
what, 1934?
35, I believe.
35,
about 35, if I'm not mistaken.
A few years. This would have been 3 years after Hitler kind of came to power.
Well, it's 33 when he became chancellor.
No, it was January of 32.
No, it was 33.
You sure?
Yep.
Okay.
It's 33. President Hindenburg died not long after that. Hitler consolidated the chancellorship and the presidency into one role, the Führer.
Der Führer.
Der Führer. And I guess the cementing of his power was after the Reichstag fire in, was it 33, 34, or something like that, maybe a little bit after. And then, again, look this.
It was 33, 34, something like that.
Yeah, and then basically,
I'm writing a book about
that takes place during this period of time.
And then a series of laws and mandate, basically edicts from Hitler that were basically paper validated by a Reichstag that was essentially, a legislative arm that was basically controlled by Hitler as well. Didn't really need it, but it was there for the presentation of, I guess, democracy at that point, or will of the people being expressed. But these folks basically instituted a series of laws that would seriously curtail freedoms for everybody in Germany, and even more so for marginalized groups such as the Jews, such as the Romani people.
Who were, well, everybody in Europe for 1,000 years had been, trying to, what do I want to say? Basically destroy the Romani.
Yeah.
And some came close, and that's another topic.
Yeah. But back to point, and including the queer community.
Yes.
So again, homosexuals and
disabled people, Slavs.
They were all
Catholic.
They were all rounded up, and eventually, some like the Jews were ghettoized, and it's a much slower process. Well, what I would say with your homosexual groups, with your queer groups, such as being much smaller in number, less influence in the community at large to begin with, were more easily picked off one by one.
I mean, there were gay men in concentration camps. There were a significant amount of gay men in concentration camps. We're talking about before the gay men started getting rounded up, like other queer groups.
Pink Triangle, I think it was.
Yeah, they were the Pink Triangles. And actually, an interesting thing is, after Americans liberated the concentration camps, since being gay was still illegal in the United States, the gay Germans in the concentration camps got put back in the concentration camps to serve out their time. Way to go, America.
Yeah.
I mean, Hitler admitted that he got his best ideas from the U.S., so...
Yeah. But again, we don't go too far off topic.
Anyway, okay, so yeah, but so that was also, anybody who says, well, trans people didn't show up until the 90s, there you go. Trans people have been around in history.
So either they did, or Hitler just made up an entire group.
Right?
Just We need more people to prosecute, to marginalize into the death category. We have photos to keep up with. Who are we talking? I have an idea. I made it up. They're transsexuals.
Don't really use fun if anybody asks, you know.
We should have taken them all to the camps. Are you a transsexual? You are now.
But,
Go to the camp.
I mean, you know,
Homosexuality is present in thousands of species. It's been scientifically proven. It's been present in thousands of species. And as far as humans go, trans people have always been part of history. Queer people have always been part of history. We've had to put together clues as to, sometimes it wasn't obvious, but the Vikings are a good example. The Vikings. Now, you have to understand that with the Vikings, we're not talking about one centralized government, but smaller tribes scattered around a certain region.
Tribes, kingdoms, petty fiefdoms.
But in a lot of ways, they were very egalitarian in gender-wise. Women could own property. Women could be, and often were, the heads of the households. Mm-hmm. And women were fighters. They went out with raiding parties. Were not just men. And there have been several burials found of skeletons that were male or female that were decorated or dressed in the opposite clothes and armor from the opposite gender. So it is believed that there were trans Vikings, and they were accepted in their communities and allowed to live as their actual gender instead of their the gender that they were born as, which is pretty cool. We could explore the idea of the two-spirit people in Native American cultures.
Also, oceanic, Pacific and oceanic cultures that have similar beliefs. Certain pre-Christian societies, definitely Egyptian, Babylonian, and pre-Christian societies of the Nile and Tigris-Euphrates regions definitely delved into masculine and feminine black word mashups.
Hatshepsut used to dress up as a man.
Yeah.
Now, people, obviously, stuffy, cis, straight scientists are just like, well, obviously she did that in order to, be, to legitimize herself as a male figure on the throne.
That's not entirely.
It's not entirely wrong,
no.
But maybe it is.
Yeah,
she was a cross-dresser, at least.
Again, we weren't there. We can't.
We don't know. We don't know. They don't. They don't know either for sure.
Yeah.
But there are records of trans and queer people all throughout history. Yeah. If you
going back to antiquity.
Yes.
Yeah. I would love to at this point to bring up again. I am not a member of the queer community. I am a straight cis white guy and have been my entire life. The closest I ever got to doubting anything close to my sexuality or my or gender or anything like that is the moments like every kid to that age when you're trying to attract whatever you're into. So as a straight person trying to attract the opposite sex, and you have those moments where you sit there and you think, maybe I'm gay, maybe it's just I'm so bad at this because I'm supposed to be. And for some people that is true, but for other people it's just awkward teenagers, and eventually it's oh no, for me being a straight cis person, I think these things, and then I'd see an attractive woman, and I'd be like, oh no, that's not it. I definitely have these feelings for the female personage. But going back, for me, I see people now always making the argument of. I guess the Matt Walsh arguments, or your folks that are your TERFs, or it's only two genders or two sexes, and for me yeah,
Did I disappear again?
yeah.
Nope.
But
I guess you're wrong.
for me, the argument falls apart both on the biological level and the sociological level. On the biological level, it falls apart because yes, the majority of the human species has an XX or an XY chromosome. But nobody's arguing that. However, there is a significant
That's
portion,
like elementary school biology.
but just within that XYXX chromosome, quote unquote, dichotomy, there are variations. Most notable that of the intersex. There could be XXY. There could be a myriad of different combinations that lead to non. I don't want to say nutrition, not non-expected presentations of primary sexual characteristics.
Because nature is what's the phrase? Nature is
Lady?
no, well, it is. But anyway, go ahead.
The other part on the biological scale is like there beyond that XX and XY chromosomal presentations of sex. There's I want to say at least over 24 different genetic markers that lead to sexual and gender presentation on a biological level. Let's say any of those which would normally be turned on, are turned off, or some of them that are turned off are turned on. What would be the result of this? Some of those affect brain chemistry.
In fact, brain scans of trans people, on brain scans of trans people, their scans line up with the gender that they are presenting as, not the gender that they were born as,
yes,
in many cases.
So again, within that brain chemistry.
And chromosomally speaking, like, you could be chromosomally male, but have female secondary sex characteristics.
Again,
this stuff happens. In fact, a lot of sporting agencies stopped doing chromosome tests because they turn out to be that, people turn out to be not what they thought they were in a lot of cases.
So, again, what would happen if any of those are turned off or any of those are turned on? Which of those affect brain chemistry? If that happens, does that lead to a transgender or agender or non-binary presentation in a given person? My other argument leans more towards the sociological. That if your argument, again, like your Matt Walsh's and other, to be the nice term, anti-trans folk, transphobic bigots is the term I tend to use. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt and argue with them like they're people, because they're certainly not going to argue towards the others that they are people. Back to point, though. Back to point. My argument is a sociological. If you're going to go with the argument is the only thing that defines manhood, womanhood, gender presentation is this binary of you're a woman, you're a man.
What do your genitals look like?
What do your genitals look like? Then none of the what's the word the term I'm looking for?
Like societal denotation of becoming a man or a woman.
Yeah, none of the rites of passage.
There you go.
None of the rites of passage should matter. Like if you're the only thing is if my junk defines me as a man, and let's say your junk defines you as a woman, and their argument or whatever you are, then none of the rest of it should matter. None of you like becoming a woman should matter. None of your what
mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs or quinceañeras or you're already a man or a woman.
Or the clothes that you wear, or the way that you act, or the demeanor that you, or the things you incorporated, because you, like, for a lot of people, you look at your junk, or you look at other people that are identify as men or women do, and you emulate. None of it. None of the sociological should matter. It's just all this, and if that's the case, your argument falls apart. Either you believe that, and at least you're still wrong, but at least you're consistent, or it all falls apart. Like
Yeah, like
You nailed it.
Yeah.
Like, nature is a crazy bitch who
Nature's not
you
a
can
binary.
say, yes, nothing in nature is binary. There's like, if you think that nature is binary, you have not been paying attention, and you probably failed elementary school biology. Um, you know, like, and this is across the board. You know, I think the problem is that you want to control people's lives. If you have a problem with queer people, you want to make it a scientific argument, despite the
Yeah.
fact that science vehemently disagrees with you.
If nature was a
And it's just an excuse for you to be a bigot and try to control people's lives.
If nature was a binary, then convergent evolution, where something like two different species that aren't related come up with similar characteristics, wouldn't be a thing. Like
It wouldn't be. There are fish that can fake change gender to trick females of their species out of mating with other males, to keep the males busy while they're like, it's amazing. Like that's a type of fish. A male fish can change to a female fish in order to keep a male fish, literally like fuck the male fish, and then change back into a male fish itself to fuck the female fish that the other male fish wanted to fuck.
yeah,
to keep the male fish,
the whore
fucking
fish,
the female fish.
the whore fish of the South Pacific.
This is nature, man.
Yeah,
Like, lizards can did none of you watch Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
Lizards can spontaneously change sex when they feel like it. Like, you know what I took from Jurassic Park is that gender is pointless and must be changed as often as desired.
trans dinosaurs will destroy us all.
That's the lesson that
What?
not in hubris, obviously,
What is the trans dinosaur agenda?
to eat people's heads off.
Yes.
Rawr.
Yes. Delicious cis human heads.
But I mean, it's like, just admit that you're a bigot and you just want to control people because your magical sky daddy, or the terrible version of the magical sky daddy that you believe in, that you've been presented at church, says that you should. It's not even in the Bible. Okay, Leviticus, you want to talk about Leviticus? A man shall not lie with another man as he would with woman. Okay, first of all, that is a Jewish commandment. Christianity didn't exist when that was written. Also, it was written and then translated into multiple languages. So unless you're reading the original, would it have been Aramaic? Original Hebrew?
It would be like
that would have been in Hebrew.
yeah,
But it would have been ancient
like
Hebrew. So unless
You're familiar with ancient Hebrew, you shouldn't be judging anyone's lifestyles. But if you want to say, I follow the letter exactly, okay. So I hope you're not a man who has his beard shaved. I hope you don't eat seafood. I hope that you're not
fabric of different.
Oh, that's a big one. Yeah, fabric of
I'm
different.
gonna stone myself right now.
Yeah, I hope that you're not a woman who had sex before she got married, because that's a stoning.
That's like that guy from The Simpsons is like, that's a stoning. That's a
stoning.
stoning.
You know, so also religion is dumb. I think religion is dumb. Like, if you need a magical sky daddy to threaten you with eternal damnation for you to be a good person, you're not a good person. Okay, you should be able to get there yourself. Unfortunately, most people who claim to be Christians are generally terrible people who think they have the right to continue being terrible people. I'm talking about people like Marjorie Taylor Greene here, who continue to be terrible people and ruin people's lives and make laws that destroy other human beings because she thinks she has the right to. I guarantee you, this woman has never actually read the Bible. She doesn't understand biblical theory or research, because if she did, she wouldn't be such an asshole and try to destroy people's lives. That's kind of the major tenet of the religion. Love everyone. Don't be a dick to anyone. Just be nice. Love thy neighbor. That's literally everything that Jesus was trying to say in his lifetime. Just love people. There you go. And this month, you know what, is about love and acceptance. This is the most Christian month in the entire fucking calendar, because all the Pride is about is loving each other and loving your community and loving yourself and accepting people for who they are. That sounds pretty fucking Christian.
Accepting people's dignity.
That's a big one too. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So
I would also like to add towards the argument of like the ultra right, the Christian right, that the I would say trans folk in particular, along with are one of the two main huge, like they're target groups.
We're a scapegoat these days.
Along with target marginalized groups, I would say the other being immigrants in particular.
Which I seem to recall several verses in Leviticus saying about if a stranger is in your land, treat them like your brother or your neighbor. I can't remember the wording exactly, but there seems to be some very strong arguments in Christianity about that specifically.
But
the people are ignoring right now.
The point I think I'm trying to raise is again to other members of the queer community, gay men, lesbian women, other folks, especially those of the white community, white queer community, that have met a certain degree of general acceptance, especially the ones like the lesbian contingents of the TERF community.
Yes, bitches, what are you doing?
I would say if you think that the elimination of the trans community from the LGBT greater supergroup is going to stop with the trans community, and if you don't think you are next, you are surely and sadly mistaken. They like I would say your especially your white TERF lesbian groups and like your queer Republican types, queer conservatives, they see you as
you're a useful tool to them.
Yeah, you are.
Until you're not.
You are a means to an end. You are a token distraction to make it so they don't look like the bigots that they are.
Yeah.
You will be useful as long as you fulfill that role. And when the role has been accomplished and and trans people have been taken out of society, if trans people, I don't want to say when, but if people, trans folk are taken out of the society, they will still need an other, and you're next on the totem pole. Like they got that bottom rung, and now they're coming for the other ones. Like you will
like the Martin Niemöller poem. You know, at first they came for the whatever. At first they came for the trans people, and I was not trans, so I didn't speak out.
Yeah.
And then they came for the gay people, and it was too late because there's no one to speak out for me.
You have more in common with like a flaming out trans person, drag queen performing there than you do with a gay Republican, or with a mainstream white cis Christian Republican. You don't see it because you've emulated that garb, you've emulated that that kind of idiom, and to the point where you believe you're closer to them than, and the only thing that separates you and them is your gayness.
Yeah.
But
it's very similar to like class work.
Yeah, you even emulate your gayness into what we were watching, that Jeffrey thing.
Jeffrey, that's a great movie. We were watching.
I introduced Sue to Jeffrey last night, and
I cannot believe I've never seen it. I want Darius and Sterling to adopt me.
Yeah. But there's like you fashioned your queerness, your gayness to emulate your straight Christian conservative counterparts, to where other than like the surface stuff, you you're basically, like part to you, or you're part of that community. But believe
We've
me,
sold your space in our greater community to fit in with mainstream society.
yeah, like, but I mean, I'm not, and again, I'm not saying that, like, maybe some people don't like that aspect of queer culture.
Oh no!
And
Like,
I'm saying that is wrong.
you know what? Maybe do you, but don't throw your community under the bus
But
in order to do that.
but on the other, but don't ever think because you've adopted every aspect of that culture that once they get rid of their perceived enemies, they will not turn on you. They will
They
turn on you.
absolutely will.
They will eventually turn on you.
But
All right, so we're getting a little bit late here. So to wrap up, I wanted to talk about there's some great documentaries that you can watch, and some great movies that you can watch this month to get you a little closer to queer culture. I would say, okay, the first one, if you're really a novice, you need to watch Paris is Burning with an asterisk. Paris is Burning was a hugely important film. It talks about the gay drag culture in New York in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, and it's come under a little bit of scrutiny since then by people in the African American communities of color, people like Bell Hooks, and some of the people who were in the documentary itself for kind of being like, because the person who made it was a white queer woman who was friends with people in this community, but not necessarily a part of the community. So it's filmed from sort of an outsider's perspective. So that's important to keep in mind as you're watching it. But that being said, I do think it's necessary viewing to understand this culture.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I haven't seen it, but
we're watching that this month.
But I think it's filmed much in a way that a sociologist films a document. And all.
Yeah. But it is important to keep that racial component in mind.
Yeah.
I would say The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson, very, very important. She was absolutely. It's not just Marsha P. Johnson. It talks about the New York City what is it? I follow them on Facebook. The New York City Anti-Violence Project, and it talks about They Catch Up with Sylvia Rivera, and it's a must see for learning about the fight that these two amazing trans women of color, fought to get us where we are. I Am Divine. Any fans out there of Divine and John Waters? I know I'm a huge fan of them. An interesting story of a gay man who oddly was, a famous drag queen who was oddly accepted into certain parts of mainstream culture. There's no, go ahead.
In certain ways he was, she was, or certain ways was the Poland.
She kind of was. She was kind of of drag queens in a lot of ways. Before Stonewall was a documentary in 1984, and then there was one that was after Stonewall. No, I haven't seen a lot of these, to be honest. I need to look. I've seen Paris is Burning multiple times, Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson, and I Am Divine. I haven't seen the rest of these, but they're definitely on my viewing list. So there's Before Stonewall, After Stonewall. There's Kiki, which is the ball scene, was also known as Kiki Balls or Kiki Dances. Fun fact, my drag queen character is named Kiki Toblerone. That was purely an accident, because I didn't find out that the ball scene was also known as the Kiki scene until this past weekend. So, The Queen from 1968. It's a very old look at the Miss All-American Camp Beauty Pageant. All-American Camp like drag queen. It's like a drag queen pageant. It's from 1968. Like, amazing. Queer as Fuck, the story behind the ballroom scene and the safe space it represents. And this was something that there's a great review on Paris is Burning by Matt Baum on YouTube. And he actually was the person that brought up the idea of the white view, the imperialist gaze, as Bell Hooks puts it, surrounding Paris is Burning, and suggested these How Do I Look 2006 Ballroom Throwbacks Television, which is a lot of literally like these balls, people performing at these balls, talking about, the history and the performances and things like that. It's very much an insider's look into that. The story behind the ballroom scene is Queer as Fuck presentation is looks pretty interesting. I really want to check that out. All right, some fictional things to get you in the mood. I would say go watch Pose, the TV show Pose with Billy Porter, and it's a revolutionary show. I have not seen all of it. I've seen like the first 2 or 3 seasons. It is hard to watch, but it is very accurate as to the lives that these people had gone through. It's an amazing show. Definitely check it out. This was during like the 80s AIDS crisis, when there were huge swathes of queer people and trans people dying of neglect from the government, basically. And when the ball scene was still going on, but it was starting to kind of die off. It's definitely worth a watch. Absolutely. It is an amazing show. There's another show called Legendary that I've never heard of until I was doing research for this. That is similar terms. I would say also Priscilla, Queen of the Desert is a must watch. To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, must watch. Moonlight, Blue is the Warmest Color, Call Me by Your Name.
I think I just introduced you to Jeffrey.
I would definitely watch Jeffrey. It's a little bit like Woody Allen's Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Too Afraid to Ask, only set in the early 90s during the tail end of the AIDS crisis. Let me think. I should have written down the fictional movies.
I would put a couple of them that I'd like to recommend.
Please, yes.
One is, I guess you could, outside of Halloween, you can watch Rocky Horror. There's a
Actually, we should talk about Rocky Horror. Rocky Horror is, it was pretty groundbreaking when it came out. In fact, okay, so I grew up, my father is a crazy person. He's, I suspect, secretly gay, but is a self-hating narcissistic. He's very angry and very violent. And he's the reason why my family, he's a big part of the reason why my family doesn't know that I am an agender person, nor that I am a pansexual. So growing up, I had no access to gay media. My entrance was the Rocky Horror Picture Show. VH1 showed it around Halloween one year. I was maybe 15 or 16, maybe 17. And my brother and I and my dad all sat up and watched it. My brother enjoyed it. My dad hated it. We recorded it. I recorded it off of TV. And, oh man, I watched that tape thousand fucking times. That was the first truly queer media I was exposed to. And my dad forbade it from being in the house. But I watched it anyway when he wasn't home. And so I understand the issues with it, but I am very biased towards it because of the groundbreaking nature that it was for me. I even have an old, not a playbill, but an old poster of it that was up on a screening that my uncle found for me somewhere that I have hanging up in our living room because it was such a monumental movie for me.
This is like, I'm guessing, an introduction to you to say that it was okay to be who you were.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, but see, the thing is that Richard O'Brien is a non-binary. person, and he or they, I'm not sure what pronouns O'Brien uses. I'll refer to him as they. But, you know, at the time, they thought that they were a gay man, I believe. And at the time, the word transvestite, as we talked about earlier in this, was sort of a catch-all for anybody who wasn't obviously a cis person, or, you know, even drag queens fell into that. Anybody who didn't dress according to their birth sex. So, you know, obviously it's not a word that is in vogue anymore.
No.
And in some parts of the trans community, it is looked at with a lot of hostility.
As a slur.
Yes, very much so.
An antiquated slur at that.
Yes, but you have to realize at the time that it came out, you know, it wasn't meant as, it was meant to be over the top and ridiculous and sort of like a propaganda film, much like Reefer Madness.
Yeah.
Only if it was turned into a musical where you really want, you know, the bad guys to win, where, you know, it's look at this decadent lifestyle and what it gets you, but it was written from the standpoint of a gay man.
I would,
you know, and it's pretty brilliant and subversive when you look at it through that lens.
I would, I guess in certain ways, like, first to, like, add the collective works of John Waters into that.
Oh, yeah, baby. I love John Waters.
I would,
but,
I was going to go back to Waters for a second. Waters, along, like, and I want to group Rocky Horror into that, is he's mentioned on a couple of occasions, and I've talked to you about, like, that he's often said that, in general, the mainstreaming and acceptance of queer culture is a net good thing, but it did come at the cost of the more dangerous nature of queerdom.
And the idea of, like,
culture.
To this point where we're having conversations of, does kink belong at Pride? Because there are children there.
Yeah.
You know, and kink has always been, kink, S&M, BDSM has always been something that's been represented at Pride from the early days, you know.
My argument is, like, it's all over, like, if you've ever seen, like, children's pageants or whatever, like,
oh, those are terrifying.
Compared to that,
I sexualizing children.
I would much rather have a 5-year-old be in the same presence of a guy dressed in biker gear than have them dressed up in pageants in pageant dress.
Yeah,
looking like some sort of adult woman in a 5-year-old's body.
It's not good.
If you want to talk about hypersexualization, that's 100 times worse.
But I would also bring up Glenn or Glenda.
Yeah.
Which, okay, so Ed Wood himself was a crossdresser. Yes. He was a cis man, but he was a crossdresser.
And he labeled himself as a transvestite
too, because that was a catch-all term at the time, you know. And yet, no, it has not aged well. But you need to understand that that was the way that these people represented themselves at the time.
Amazing piece of unintentional kitsch.
Oh God, it's an amazing movie. But it was very much like it was about a real person, Christine Jorgensen, who was the first American to have a sex change operation in the United States, which was what it was called at the time. Now we call it, you know, gender reassignment. And it was a fictionalized version of that, told by someone who was an ally, but also on the outskirts of the queer umbrella, I suppose you could say. So yeah, no, that's definitely something to check out for queer history. Boy, what do you think?
I have another one I love to. I mentioned before, Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Oh, you know what? That's one that I have not heard. I've not seen, but I've wanted to see.
Yeah, it's not even. It's not just a great, like, you know, like a queer film, but I also love it from being a fan of the glam rock of the '70s, and I know a lot of people who are Rocky Horror fans. It has a far superior soundtrack to Rocky Horror.
You don't like the pelvic thrust?
I like it. I think I like it more because
I have heard some of the music from it, and it's pretty cool. Not a lot. I need to watch it.
Maybe to a certain degree, it's from the incorporation of Rocky Horror into the zeitgeist. It's kind of like if an album becomes popular, like when I was in high school. I was a Guns N' Roses fan, and then when you see that one guy who's dressed up like he's on the football team, he's got a little Vanilla Ice thing going on. He's in a tracksuit. Oh, Guns! And you see your Guns N' Roses t-shirt, like, oh man, Guns N' Roses! I love that band, Sweet Child of Mine. That's a great song, man. I sing when I make out with my girlfriend, and like he just wants to like fuck you. Like, and I feel like to a certain degree that's with like Rocky Horror. Like with your straight mainstream crowd, it's like, and the mainstream popularization of it, it's like, whatever. It was cool and rebellious 40 years ago, and
I mean, it still holds a place in queer film history.
yes,
But it's definitely become very mainstream.
it's been.
I think I was the gayest damn person at the Rocky Horror screening last year.
Yeah, it was. Sometimes it felt like something. I don't know. I'm sure there were queer people in the audience, but it was like sometimes it just felt like it was cosplay, like
A little bit.
a little bit of cosplay, and like I
mean, talk about cosplay. This is the most female presenting I've looked since my grandmother's funeral 2 summers ago.
No, last summer, I guess. Not enjoying it.
Yeah.
Because I'm an agender person, but I'm very much not a female presenting. I have really big tits, so it becomes hard to not be female presenting because of that. So I'm not a fan of it. I'm one of those. I call the non-binaries and the agenders like Schrodinger's trans people, because to some people you're trans and to some people you aren't, and that goes for self-identification purposes too. So, yeah, I'm not enjoying this. But I do have a drag queen character that I dress up as on my show called Kiki Toblerone, who is the most ridiculously feminine I've ever seen. She's basically like a trailer trash Barbie doll who thinks that she's classy. It's amazing, but I don't like dressing like this outside of my bouffant blonde wig, quite frankly. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Movies.
Yeah.
I guess you answered the birdcage already.
Oh, the Birdcage.
I love the Birdcage is the only gay movie with gay characters that my dad enjoys, which is saying something, because it's just that funny. And the guy that's in it is a lot like my dad. He's very close-minded, conservative, hateful, bigoted douche nozzle. So this is
But your dad's nowhere near as cool as Gene Hackman.
Yeah, no, this is Gene Hackman's character I'm talking about. But my dad is not nearly as cool as Gene Hackman, and he doesn't look as good in the wig either. But I love the Birdcage. That was another one. That was like that's very mainstream gay, because it's like, God, even my bigoted father loves this movie. And
Hey, somebody wrote a comment.
hey, what's up? Have you ever tried an illustrated PFP?
We don't know what that is.
We're old.
What's it out? What is that?
Anyway,
And if you're like a scammer, fuck off. But
Yeah.
if you're a genuine person wanting to tell us like
I don't know.
how to
You're old.
please, if you're genuine like for this Roxy person, like if you're genuinely trying to tell us something cool to like incorporate into our program, we're more than happy to listen.
Yeah.
If you're like some sort of scammer trying to sell us up, we're broke. So like
Anyway.
you might want to move on.
Anyway, so yeah, the Birdcage. Oh God.
We hope you're the first one, not the second.
But I really should have written these down.
Yeah.
I know there's some older movies. You know what? The Hays Code was instituted in Hollywood in 1933 to make movies safer for audiences. And before that, it was sort of like anything goes, like Howard Hughes, like flying 30 aircraft and like crashing them and people dying and extras dying in a Noah's Ark movie. And okay, so those were good, but there were actually like, hey, they followed us. Hey, dude.
Bushy Rectum says cheap viewers on
Streamboo.com. All right. Anyway, so there were interesting movies. I can't remember the name of it, but there was a movie. It was about a bunch of men who were drag performers. It was like 1922, and there was a young girl who was an orphan who was working kind of a crappy job, a service industry job, and she decided to start dressing in drag and performing with these drag performers. And I can't remember the name of it. If you guys remember the name of it, it was actually a great movie.
I also would like to give a shout out to Victor Victoria.
Oh, Victor Victoria, that's a good one. Julie Andrews.
I've never seen
I love
that.
the hell out of Julie Andrews.
I watched it a few years ago for the first time. I love the hell out of Julie Andrews. It's the high school theater nerd in me. I love Julie Andrews. I love musical theater. But yes, that's also a good one. That's actually, I'm pretty sure that's sort of a modern retelling of this movie that I'm talking about. It's very similar, actually. But yeah,
Also,
there was a lot of like movies, very gender bendy, drag, trans, friendly movies before the Hays Code came out. So definitely like do some deep diving in that. You know, I know they're hard to find. I would say try places like SoulSeek. You just like peer-to-peer software. You can find some really interesting old movies in places like that.
Also, there's some not officially gay, but gay coded. I would put Spartacus has some.
Gay coded. Yeah, even after the Hays Code was implemented, there's some gay coded shit out there.
You ever watch any Gladiator movie?
Yeah, I've never seen Spartacus, but I've heard
I
it's
would
very
also
gay
like to recommend the montage scene from Rocky 3. Like that is the gayest
It's
thing I ever.
unintentionally gay.
Yeah, I don't think Stallone meant it, but it was like
That
that.
was the short shorts.
Yeah, it was.
But, you know,
And
that
then
was
running together like in the ocean, like yeah.
They would have been
Rocky
such a pretty
3
couple.
is super.
Yeah.
Like from Rocky looking for the approval of his father figure and never quite getting it, to Clubber Lang being that super aggressive.
That was. Wait a minute.
That's Mr. T.
Oh, I thought you were talking about number 4.
Nah, number 3.
Oh no, yeah, number 3 was the one where they were running on the beach.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
To
Yes.
the montage scene with Apollo and Rocky. It is super gay. Like I don't think Sylvester Stallone intended it that way. I think he tried to sell it as like an ultra machismo thing, but in that
Yeah,
like
but it's
in his process of doing it, it just
well, ultra machismo is very much based on testosterone levels.
Yeah.
Is extremely gay.
Yeah.
Because most gay men have much higher testosterone levels than straight men.
Yes.
At least this is what I learned a long time ago. It may have changed. I don't know. But let's see. I'm looking up a list here. Yeah, Call Me by Your Name, Blues, Warmest Color. I said that.
The Danish Girl, I haven't seen it.
You know, okay, Brokeback Mountain, it was a joke for a long time, but it highlights these two people living these fake lives, you know, when the only time they really feel like they can be themselves is together. And I think there are a lot of aspects that talk about the kind of pressures that gay men had to face when they were hiding who they were from society in open, you know, in public. And I think that it was actually really well presented in that movie. It's actually pretty depressing. Like the only time that they could be who they are is with each other, and the rest of the time they had to pretend to be something they weren't. No, I can say. Oh, Milk.
I saw Milk.
The one about Harvey Milk. I've never seen it, but Harvey Milk, huge groundbreaking guy in San Francisco, gay organizer. Yeah, we should have talked about Harvey Milk. I didn't think about that.
Even though I know you hate Sean Penn.
I don't like Sean. Sean Penn is a piece of shit. Sean Penn, like, held Madonna captive and beat the shit out of her at one point. He had her tied to a fucking chair. Okay? The guy should not be making movies. He should be in jail. Moonlight. I really want to see that Moonlight. I have not watched that yet. Oh, Kill Your Darlings. I forgot about that. Daniel Radcliffe as Allen Ginsberg. I'm a big Allen Ginsberg fan. I'm a big fan of the Beat Poets. Other than the whole NAMBLA thing, which is not good. It's gross. It's gross, and it paints all of us in a bad light.
Yeah.
Alan, come on. But Kill Your Darlings. Oh, Boys Don't Cry. It's the movie about Brandon Teena with starring Hilary Swank as Brandon Teena. Good movie.
Savini's in it too.
Oh, that's right. She was in that. I forgot about that. Hard to watch, but good.
I guess there's a lot of.
I would say I'm trying to think of older stuff, because there's been a lot of movies that have come out in the last 20 to 25 years.
I think there's certain tropes within those movies. Like one of them, not necessarily a good one, and I think a lot of especially straight people doing queer films, is the Kill Your Gays.
Yeah, that was that for a long time. Yeah. Oh, Carol, the one with Kate Blanchett. That actually looked really good. I wanted to see that one. I always say that, oh yeah, that looks really good. I want to see that.
And there was one movie I was trying to remember. Well, one of two movies. One of them's called Foxfire with Angelina Jolie. It's a very early Angelina Jolie film featuring.
Oh yeah, you can look stuff up on
it. There's this other one that I wanted. Piper Pierbo. I'm trying to remember.
Is that the one where she was the model lady? She died of AIDS.
No, that's Gia.
Oh, Gia, yeah.
Piper Pierbo was an actress. She did this movie too about queer at a school that I thought was pretty good. Look at it real quick.
And look for all older ones,
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? There's a great show. It's currently on Tubi. It's called Vicious. It was a 2-season run British comedy starring Ian McKellen and Derek Jacobi as an old gay couple. It is hilarious. It is extra hilarious if you know anything about theater. If you have a theater background, I have a very minor theater background. I did local theater and college theater, and there are some great jokes in it about things that only theater people would get. Definitely check that out. It is hilarious, and it's fantastic. It's also neat to see two old gay men who have been best friends for years, and also Patrick Stewart, who is like the token straight guy who's the old, friends with them, and they're all best friends for decades, and it's fantastic. I feel like I'm really I'm not doing good at this. I should be doing much better at this. The Color Purple. The Color Purple it's a film about it's definitely an a film that it talks about the Black experience. It also talks about
there's queer intersectionality.
Intersectionality. That's what I was trying to talk about. Adventures of Priscilla.
There's another one I like to put out is Lost and Delirious. I
don't know that one.
It's pretty good. It's with Piper Pierbo and Jessica Pear. It's a French Canadian last name, so I don't know if it's Perret or Pear.
Something like that.
But she was basically about these girls in an all-girls school, and various members of them discover their queerness over the course of the film.
I don't know that one, but
it's pretty good. It's a fun little 90s film. But I'm a cheerleader. That's a great one.
We just watched this in the past year or two. It is hilarious. It is basically Natasha Lyonne, who those of you probably know her now from Poker Face on Peacock.
Or what was the one on Netflix? The one where Russian Doll.
Oh, Russian Doll, right.
I knew her from the 90s.
I've known her because there's a bunch of
From
people
the Beverly Hills
who are like
sorry.
my generation, like Melanie Linsky, Michelle Williams. But anyway, it's a girl who she's real ultra feminine, and she ends up at a queer conversion camp with a bunch of other queer kids, and it is RuPaul is in it as one of the people working at the camp, and
it's the best
it's
John Waters
amazing.
film not directed by
yes,
John Waters.
it is. If John Waters directed a teen film, it would be But I'm a Cheerleader. It is fantastic. Obviously, you can add any John Waters movie to this, especially like his older ones. I think are great.
They're the ones that
Female
subversive
Trouble,
ones.
the very subversive. Female Trouble.
Personal.
Pink Flamingos.
Also, I have a soft spot for Cecil B. Demented.
I love Cecil B.
I have a huge.
It's not one that usually ends up on his list,
But I think it's fantastic. Hairspray, not overtly gay, but Divine is the bomb. But
None of the ones in the 80s or 90s are overtly gay, but they are framed within. It's almost like a queer outsider doing a satire on straight culture. I would say there's definitely the 80s and 90s films.
oh, you know what? That's right. Everything Everywhere All at Once has a lot of queer elements to it, and it's intersectionally Asian American. It's a hell of a movie, though. Just outside of that, if you want to watch a good ass movie, it's an amazing movie. Excellent. There's I can't remember. There was a woman, it was the early 2000s. She was of Indian descent. She made a couple of small independent movies about, one took place in South Africa, and one took place in India, where there was a Hindi woman and a Muslim woman who fell in love. And this was after the schism, but it was the one in South Africa took place in the late 1800s. The one in India took place, I think, in the 20s, the 10s or the 20s, I think that's the 20s. And she wasn't, she was a little on the amateur side, but it was actually very good. I can't remember her name now to save my life, but
There's some bad queer representation, like what was the one Oliver Stone put out?
I would say Bound. Bound is definitely a Kill Your Gaze. That's the one with Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly.
I have a lot of gay friends in Los Tula that movie.
I've never seen it, but I don't like it when they, it's like this person's bisexual, they're evil. Or this person's gay, they're evil. They have to die by the end.
Yeah, like
I don't like that. We need to get beyond that. Okay?
Like I
try not to watch this.
I love Silence of the Lambs, but I can't.
I love Silence of the Lambs too.
But the Buffalo
Bill is not a trans person. Okay, it's very clearly set forth. Buffalo Bill is not a trans person. Okay, he dated a trans man. But he is very much not a trans person. They in the book, it is very clear that he's not a trans person. In the movie, it's very clear that he's not a trans person. But because he's making a suit out of, actually, he was more like Ed Gein. He was based off of Ed Gein, who is not a trans person, but he made suits out of people. So I would say that Silence of the Lambs is not an anti-trans movie by any regard.
But it's certainly adopted by anti-trans.
It has been, yes, and you have to be careful with that
And
one.
it's not that. I want to say your police procedurals in general.
Let's talk about, what was that one that you saw? The one that came out recently with Zoe Saldana?
I didn't see it.
I thought you said you watched that.
No. The one where it's basically, it was like a Mexican.
The Mexican cartel.
No, I didn't watch it.
Oh, I thought you did.
No.
What was the name of that?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, that was pretty new. Apparently, it's been pretty bad.
Yeah, it's been universally panned for both being xenophobic and transphobic. Basically painted by, it's like an example of a straight a straight auteur, a straight male auteur, basically doing almost absolutely no research, doing a movie based purely on surface level tropes, but who does have some cinematic talent. So basically, they're able to brush over their failings as failings of research and failings as somebody who's has any understanding of the subject matter. It's glossed over in what's it like? I guess in tassels and glitter, and for lack of a better term. And then so I guess certain aficionados. Apparently, the movie was well reviewed by a certain subsect of the review and the
Well, yeah, it won a bunch of
the
awards.
film community. Yeah, but basically panned by every Latino group and every queer group in the country.
Yeah. Okay, and you know what? For a movie that was made by straight people, starring straight people, I have to give some love to Tu Wong Fu. Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar, because I love their depiction of drag queens.
Yeah, they're all sympathetic both for
Yes, and I love that John Leguizamo's character was sort of a baby queen, and these two more experienced queens were taking her, trying to kind of mold her into, a better queen, and they end up in this village where this little town, and they, are like, it's okay to feel your femininity. It's okay to be big and brash and take up room in this world because, okay, obviously I'm an agender person. I'm assigned female at birth, clearly. And so, I do know what it's like to grow up as a girl and being told that, you're not allowed to take up room. You have to condense yourself, make yourself as small as possible to let other people shine around you. And I love the message of, you can shine yourself. You're not the moon, you're the sun. You can shine just as well as anybody else out there. And you should take up room and you should be as big as you want to be. And I like that message, And Patrick Swayze looks so good in a dress.
Even, what's his name?
Patrick Swayze looks better in a dress than he does in very tight jeans, and that is saying something. Okay.
And Wesley Snipes.
Ooh, Wesley Snipes was gorgeous. Oh my God. My God, he was beautiful. So was John Leguizamo. They did it so well, and you have to give them a lot of credit for that. But anyway, so okay, we've been talking for 2 hours, and we gotta go make dinner.
Yeah.
All right, so
watch some totally straight stuff in professional wrestling.
Yeah, we're gonna watch
that Seth Rollins guy. He's super macho butch.
Honestly, I absolutely love the theater nerd in me. Loves Seth Rollins costuming. It's fabulous. All right, so happy Pride Month, everybody. Go throw some bricks at some people who deserve it. Not really, because I'll get in trouble and they won't put this.
We are not advocating for violence.
I'm usually advocating for violence, but I can't do it online because I'll get in trouble. So don't throw bricks at people.
Yeah.
All right, but happy Pride, babies. We'll see you guys on Friday. Have a good night, everybody.